Welcome back to another video, and today we will be ranking all the higher end eyeshadow palettes that I tried during the year 2023. And just like with the previous ranking regarding my drugstore eyeshadow palettes, few things before we go to the actual palette ranking itself. So just like with the drugstore ones, I am only going to be showing the higher end eyeshadow palettes that I have still in my collection. So if a higher end eyeshadow palette that I have tried the first time this year has been decluttered during one of my 2 declutters this year, then it's not all included in this ranking. Also, these have been palettes that I have tried the first time this year, so necessarily they haven't been released this year. There are a couple of palettes here that I do know for sure that have actually been released like earlier. But anyway, those were the disclaimers, and let's get to the palette ranking itself. And today I checked my list, and there should be 13 higher end eyeshadow palettes that I will be ranking. So number 13, and I think if you have watched any of my videos regarding some of the Christmas holiday collections this year, this shouldn't really surprise you. So this is the number 13. This is the Dior Holiday 2023 palette, and this is in the shade Promenade. Dorée is the shade of this, and then I'm going to be showing how this looks like. So why have I been complaining? This was probably the most expensive mistake buy that I have made in terms of eyeshadow this year. I did get some discount from this, but altogether I did pay somewhere between 50 and 60 euros for it. And it's just that it's very one-dimensional. So the one thing that I've critiqued most of this is that actually, even though it has 3 of these gold shades, they do look quite similar on my eyes, on my skin tone. There's only really the one dark brown shade that you can use as a deepening up shade. The silver in the middle does bring some variety to this, but unfortunately, because 3 of the 5 shades are golds that look quite similar once you get them to the eye, this ranks the bottom. Also, another reason is that I didn't like the longevity of this one. Unfortunately, this really didn't last. I think I got half a day with this, and then I noticed that they started creasing on my eyes. So considering the expensive price and just the color selection and the durability, how long these lasted on my eyes, that is the reason why unfortunately this ranks the last in my this year's eyeshadow ranking in terms of the higher end palettes. So on the next spot we have another one of a holiday collection from this year, and another higher, well, these are all high-end palettes, but another sort of very non-luxury brand. So unfortunately on the 12th spot we have the Pat McGrath Starstruck Splendour. So this was the bigger of the 2 holiday palettes I got. And I think, as I said it already in my review, my favorite part of this are the 2 blushes here, and this is actually a blush shade that she has come out with before, and I actually do have now 2 of these. At least. I should check that. I also have another face palette from her that do actually have this now 3 times. But why this ranks the 12th is that in terms of color story, this is very sort of, at this point we have seen this quite many times. And this isn't even anything original in terms of Pat McGrath. There are these few greenish blue shades down here that do bring some bit of excitement, but then again these actually don't really go with the mattes, because this has this sort of very traditional brownish light lilac, pinkish matte shades in it. So also, even though it has 2 bit more exciting shades, they don't really go with the rest of the palette. And the other shimmers are just very sort of basic shimmers that aren't any special shades or anything like that, and they are shades that Pat McGrath has done before. Also, something that did dock points from this is that the mattes, they do feel a bit dry. So when I use, sorry, not mattes, the mattes are fine. The shimmers in this, they feel a bit dry to the touch. So I like to apply my shimmers with fingers, and they feel a bit gritty when you rub your finger in them. It doesn't affect any way in their performance. The shimmers actually, when you get them to the eyes, they do perform nicely, but it's just another thing that I've noticed, considering that I have Mothership palettes, and then there is another holiday palette here from her this year that will rank higher, is that compared to those very creamy and blendable shimmers, these do feel a bit dry. So yeah, altogether, because this is just it's very average. You can get this now on sale on her website. I do think with the sales price this might actually be a good good thing to buy if you want to sort of dip your toes in the Pat McGrath and try her blushes and some of her basic shadow shades. However, because the shadows in here themselves are quite basic and something we have seen quite a lot from her and from other higher-end brands, that is why this also ranks quite low in this year's ranking. So next we're going to have a Tarte palette. So this was actually the first time this year that I got to try Tarte. I visited 2 countries this year that have a Sephora store that I was able to check out the products before buying. There are a few online places, including Tarte's own website, that do ship to my country. However, because my country doesn't have a Sephora, it's not a brand I can go and really see the products unless I'm traveling abroad. But this is the Tarlette Energy palette, and quality-wise I don't have anything to complain about this. I think Tarte's formula, the mattes are a bit on the thinner side. However, for my fair skin, I am able to build them up to a opacity that I like and that looks nice on my eyes. And also the shimmer shades, like, again, there's nothing wrong with the shimmers of this. However, why this ranks also quite in the bottom half of the ranking is that this looks much more versatile than it actually is. So this kind of looks like that you would get something like a purple look, then maybe a neutral look and a pink look. But I actually noticed I had this in the beginning of the year in my sort of 2-week rotation. I actually noticed that after a couple of days, like, I think these two that are the sort of berry shade and the purple shade over here are quite deceiving. Because actually this one, this is actually something that you can use to darken the looks up, but because this is actually a berry shade, it actually changes most of your looks, that you will get some sort of pink look with this one. So it's going to be either a very pinky neutral look that you will get this, no matter what kind of what shades you use from this palette. So it's a nice palette, it's quite, I'd say, decent quality. This isn't like one of Tarte, isn't the most like expensive higher end brands. I definitely think that it's a brand that you can perhaps start with if you're thinking about trying some higher end shadows, but you don't want to go and spend the Natasha Denona prices, then this could be a good place to start with. But in terms of versatility and this is why it ranks quite low, and because it perhaps looked more promising than it actually was in practical use. So on the number 10 spot we are having a Charlotte Tilbury palette. So this is the Pillow Talk Dream Luxury palette, and I believe this is the more like sort of intense version of her Pillow Talk palette, and I have to hold this very carefully because unfortunately, like, the first thing that I will give this like bit of minus points for is that the pale shimmer shade in this corner that has actually already like fallen off, and it fell off like a couple of days from when I actually bought this palette, so I don't think it was pressed in as tightly as the other shades. So that's already, considering how much these little quads cost, that's already something that will take some points away. And why this ranks in 10, if we forget the shade that's loose on the pan, is that the quality of these shadows is nice. I'd say Charlotte Tilbury isn't my favorite higher end formula, but I do think that the look you create with this is very beautiful. I do have one YouTube shorts where I have basically a full face of Charlotte Tilbury products in that, and I did a look on that shorts with this one, and the look that comes out with this one is very like beautiful, and I do like this sort of brownish goldish shimmer shade that turns almost into a burgundy. Like, this is very, very beautiful, and I do think that you will be able to, I think with this one, why I actually wanted this more than the original Pillow Talk is that with this one you already can get quite a lot of depth because there is like this very dark brown shade here. So I think that in terms of quality and the look you will be able to get with this. I rank this on number 10 spot. However, this isn't like super versatile or anything. It's essentially a quad, and I would maybe see if I could get this on some sort of offer and not pay the full price. I think these go for 48 or 50 euros, so yeah. But that was my number 10 pick for this ranking. And on number 9 spot we are going to be having another luxury holiday release. So this is the Chanel Lumiere Graphique Quint. And I already think I ranked this on another, it wasn't ranking, it was I think a monthly review video. Why I have been perhaps ranking this much higher than the Dior is purely because I think that with this one there is already a bit more depth and a bit more things you can do with this. Again, because it's a quint, just like with other these type of palettes, you aren't gonna get a lot of looks. However, I do believe the quality of these shadows is a bit better compared to, like I said, some of the other higher end options that I have showed. And I do like actually the looks that I get out from this. So I think every time I've worn this, I have felt like this sort of very sort of 20s Gatsby style glam when I have been wearing this. And you can get quite smoky with this because this black is actually something that you are able to... What I like about this black is that for someone who doesn't like wearing black, which is me, I can build it to look like a bit opaque and a bit depth, but you can actually, I tried it and you can actually build this quite dark, so if you do like a super smoky eye, I do think that it's still possible with this one. But I think something that you should maybe first be aware of is that this is quite a cool tone palette, so even though there is this sort of orangey looking pale shade here, all of the shades are quite cool toned, so that is on the actual when you apply them to the eyes, so that is just something that you should be aware of. But yeah, sort of, I think from the shadows, this is definitely starting to be like a bit more of the better ones that I like, but again, because it's the quint, that's why it is ranked as it is ranked in this video. So next we are now getting to the more, I think, like I already said previously, these are actually palette that I am, let's say, having a bit more already like, more things that I like about them than I dislike about them. So this is, we are now going to the, I'm just thinking, is this the last holiday we are talking about? Yeah, this might be the last holiday from the stuff that we're talking about in this particular ranking. So this is the Pat McGrath, this is one of the quints that she came out, and I believe this was named the Lunar Nightshade palette. And like I said already in the review, my only issue, like the bigger issue with this is that the matte shade, which is the only matte shade this has, is this purple. This is like a dud. It's patchy, it's not something nice to work with, and just I think because this only has 5 shades, it sort of like decreases the value of this quite a lot that the only matte shade isn't working. However, all of the shimmer shades in this one are very creamy. As I mentioned with the Starstruck Splendour, what very downgraded that palette to me is that the shimmer shades, they do feel a bit dry to the touch. I feel that with this one, this has these sort of very nice creamy shimmer shades that she had in her quints last year. And that is why I already prefer this all to the bigger palette. And also it has a bit excitement to it because it has this sort of dark blue tones. Something that I have given this also a bit of minus points is that these two shades do look quite similar on the eyes, but I think one of them is a bit more sparkly and then one of them is a bit more like not exactly satin-like, but if you don't want to have like a super sparkly lid, you can use the other shade, which is more perhaps gives you more than just this basic kind of shine to your eyelid. But yeah, I think nothing else to say. This one, just like the big palettes, I think these are now on sale on Pat McGrath website, and I think particularly if you're able to get these from sale, these are worth their price. Next we are going to, I believe this might be the palette number 7 if I'm not wrong in my list. And now we're actually going to see both of the Natasha Denona palettes that I have bought during this year, and these two might surprise you because these aren't exactly new palettes, either of these ones. So on number 7 spot we have this one. So this is the Natasha Denona Pastel palette, and this is how she looks like. And why this ranks where it ranks. So this is the good Natasha Denona quality. However, because this is one of her older palettes, the shimmers in this they aren't the super sparkly shimmers I know that she has put now in her like bigger, newer palette, midi-sized palettes, but nevertheless, the quality of this is very good. And if you're a makeup artist or someone who uses like pastels on a weekly basis, then I would put your money towards this like more expensive higher end pastel palette. However, as I said on my drugstore video, W7 for example has a dupe for this. If you are someone who only uses pastels as once in a while accent colors, or only maybe once a year or twice a year on a festival season or something like that, then I wouldn't maybe put my money on this, because these are quite particular shades, and why this ranks below the next palette that I will be showing is that I don't use this as a standalone palette, so I own the Circa de Loco palette, and I use this as a companion palette with that one, and together these two those two make a cohesive palette for me. However, alone, I unfortunately, even though I have a fair skin tone, even I can't make this work as a lone palette because I do need something bit more to bring some depth to my looks. But quality-wise, very nice. I do like the packaging design, it's very pretty. But as I said, I would really consider before buying a standalone pastel palette that how much you really want to put money forward one if you're only using it once a while. If this is something that you will use daily, then sure, go and spend your money on the more expensive one, because the quality of these shades is very good, and durability of them is certainly warrants the higher end price tag. So then the spot number 6. So this is the Natasha Denona My Dream palette, and I believe this was the palette she came out with the theme that this would be her dream color story, and then I will show. So the reason why this ranked above the pastel palette, why I do love the sort of pastel-y pretty shades, why this has to rank above that is that because the quality of this one and the pastel one are quite on par with each other. There are no quality differences between these two. However, this is something that I can use as a standalone palette, so for me this isn't the companion palette to anything, but this is one cohesive palette. And this sort of this almost has this theme of having this sort of more darker, warmer, neutral tones, and for me this isn't my go-to color story. I do have my neutral moments, but I do like my neutral palettes to have a bit of something extra to them. So I'm a person who likes to have neutral palettes, but I do actually like them to have something a bit extra to them. But this is essentially a quite basic warm neutral palette that we have seen quite a lot by this point in the makeup industry. But however, something extra I'll give it to this one is that it has the sort of very nice multichrome shade. I don't know if my camera will be able to pick up the shifts, but it's there. It brings something extra to the table. There's also this one orangey shade, the shade Invention, that I have to be careful because I have panned it quite heavily. And I think this perhaps was a shade that has inspired her afterwards to put more of these sort of shinier shimmers in her newer palette. So quite a lot of these, because this is one of her older formulas, most of the shimmer shades here are more, I wouldn't say they're satin, but they aren't these super sparkly ones. But they are all very nice, and they all look very pretty on the eyelids. And yeah, I'd say that if you're still thinking that should you buy this, if you like your warm neutral tones and you like Natasha Denona quality in general, then this is, I think, still a good buy. But if you want the more sort of amped up shimmers, then perhaps look at the I Need a Nude palette that she released later this year. I believe it was in the beginning of the fall. So next one is a bit surprised that this is actually ranking already quite high, but this is the Tarte Big Ego palette. So this is the second Tarte palette that I have gotten in my collection. I know this has gotten very varied reviews on YouTube and on social media, and I don't think this has been generally Tarte's most popular release, but I like the quality of this. The matte quality, like I said, Tarte's matte quality is a bit thinner. You have to build it up, so take that as you will and consider is it something that suits your makeup preferences. However, what particularly for me, why this ranks so highly, is that I actually like the shimmers in this are more, they have a bit more oomph to them compared to the Tarlette Energy palette that I showed previously, because while that had nice shimmers, they were quite basic, but this one already has there is a bit more something to them. They are just, I think, a lot prettier. I'm gonna actually see if I can hand swatch them. So, wasn't perhaps the best day to put a white cardigan on top of. Yeah, I think the swatches are quite crappy, but still see if I can. Yeah, the swatches aren't exactly showing how good, because I have tried these on the eyes and I do feel that on the eyelid they are actually very, very beautiful, and generally Generally, I think that compared to also the Tarlette Energy, this already has a bit of variety, so you can get this sort of... I have one YouTube shorts with this, and I did a purple-blue look, and you can create a full-on purple-blue look with this one. There's enough shades in those kind of shades that it's not like a pop, you can actually create a full-on look. Then you can create something pink, which is something that a lot of us like to create. Then you can create something neutral, and you can create something cool toned, because there is silvers, and I'd say the brown neutrals here are quite mid. They aren't sort of warm and they aren't super cool, but because it has the silver and the sort of navy blue in this corner, you can actually also create this sort of more neutral kind of a cool tone look with this one. But yeah, I think it has been a bit surprise. I haven't used this a super lot, but the times that I have used this, I have really liked the looks, and like I said, I do think that there is actually already quite a bit of variety what you can do with this one. And we are made it to the top 4, so there will be some, how should I say, I think before going to the top 4, I think I have to talk a bit about doing this ranking. So I think with my drugstore ones and then the indie palettes that I will be doing the last, because I have so many of those compared to the other categories, is that this year I have felt that the higher end palettes have truly been the palettes that haven't actually been creating interest in me compared to perhaps some other kinds of palettes. And I think it shows in this top 4 because I think this is one of the rankings that would be most likely depended on the day, that if I would do the ranking, my Excel sheet ranking again in any other day, quite a lot of these would probably switch places. And that's just purely because it's not necessarily about the palettes themselves, but it's just that a lot of these palettes, because I love eyeshadow palettes and usually I have quite strong opinions about what I like and what I don't like. However, I feel that this year the higher end palettes particularly, there isn't such strong emotions related to them. So like if I would do this ranking on another day, these palettes could easily switch places, because it's just... I think it's been kind of meh in terms of higher end eyeshadows. I haven't been as excited about them as I have been in the last maybe couple of years. I do think one thing that has impacted is that there has been so many, the indie brands have amped up their game so much, and also the availability of indie eyeshadow palettes here in Europe, it has become better now that Monolith Shop ships a lot of the sort of US indie brands that previously were very, very difficult or expensive for us here to get. And also we have had some other, we have had our own good indie brands stepping up. So for example, Gloss Gods, Odin's Eye, Glam Shop from Poland. So there is definitely because some indie palettes and higher end palettes, they go in the same price categories. So when when you're paying over 50 euros or 60 euros or 70 or 80 or even 100 euros for a palette, there's always the question that does the palette offer something special for me? And I think generally when I did this ranking, I was with most palettes I was thinking that these are nice palettes, they're good quality palettes, but they don't really offer anything unique. But yeah, that's about that little side rant about higher end palettes. But anyway, let's get to the top 4 ranking itself. So, but the top 4 now. So, on the 4th position, I think it's a palette that does deserve to be there. So this is the ABH Fall Romance palette. And this was now the sort of first newer format Anastasia Beverly Hills palette that I bought. The previous, I think, let's see, the Primrose was first one that had also the 2 blushes that was released in the first format. And the palettes from after that, they haven't really gotten my interest. The Cosmos palette that I believe came out before this was sort of when I was already thinking that that might be it. However, I did hold it back when I saw that quite a lot of the shifty looking shades were actually more they look, and when I swatched it in store, the palette, they were actually more topper-like shades, so I decided to skip it because I knew that I had similar shades on my indie palettes. However, when I saw the color story with this one, I immediately knew that this would be the newer ABH format palette that I would get. And this is how the color story looks like. And why this ranks is the 4th is that what I was positively surprised about this. And having so many palettes and having been trying makeup and using makeup for so long, it really takes quite a lot for a palette to sort of surprise me, especially in a positive way. And what surprised me about this one is that while it perhaps looks initially that it's quite a basic neutral palette, there was actually quite a lot of different kind of looks that I could do with this one. And particularly I think one thing is the mattes that have been chosen for this, and then the shimmers. So these sort of shimmers, I'd say that while they are relatively opaque, they do adjust a little bit on top of the matte depending on the matte you choose, which means that the shimmer shade can look a bit different depending on what kind of matte you layer it on with this palette. And I have been able to create a beautiful like a pink look with this one, this sort of dark lilac look. Then I have been able to create a brown smoky eye with this one. I was able to create this sort of very dark greenish faux look with this one. And of course I have been able to do like a very basic brown look with a gold on the eyelid. And yeah, so definitely I think a palette that I think that in terms of did this get the hype it deserved. I think this got it didn't get super hyped up, but this did get some attention in social media. But I definitely like hope that ABH will now continue with these kind of like releasing these sort of interesting color stories, and I do like this new formula. It's not as powdery and kick-uppy as her like previous, for example, matte formula was. I still have the sultry palette from her like in her older formula. And I do think that the shimmers have been improved, so the shimmers in the sultry, they are quite nice, but I do think that the shimmers in this one, there has been some sparkle added to them and they look very, very beautiful. And yeah, I'd say that if you've been thinking about getting this, then I would definitely like recommend this. I don't think you will be disappointed. Just something that you should remember with this one is that all the matte shades are quite dark, so there's only like really one lighter matte. Well, it's not actually lighter, it's a mid-toned brown matte that this has. So if you are someone who's super fair or someone who doesn't like super deep looks, then this might be something that you should skip. However, I have been able to make this work on my skin even though I have quite of a lighter skin tone. And palette number 3. And similarly as the previous palette, this is here because it managed to surprise me in a positive manner, and considering that the Dior palette was the last palette on this ranking, meaning it's ranked as the worst higher-end palette that I have in my collection, it's quite amazing that the third best palette that I have tried this year is a Dior palette, completely like within the same brand. However, this is from their Backstage line. So this is the Silver Essential palette, and I do believe this actually, like, if I watched a lot of like these luxury makeup review channels, and quite a lot of them have been praising the quality of this one, and I was a bit on the fence that should I really buy it, but this is something that was actually available for me here in store, so I could check it in store before buying. And I just think that the quality difference between this and the quint, like, because this is the Backstage line, this is cheaper than the Dior quints in their main line, but the quality of this is just so much better. These shades build up, but they're still so blendable, and this is probably like the only palette that I'm happy to do a smoky eye with, because generally if I usually try to do a smoky eye with any other palette I would look like a panda bear. But with this one, because the blend is so effortless but the shadows still build so well, I am able to get this sort of very sophisticated smoky eye that I don't get with others. And also I do say that it's obviously is a 9-pan, so you don't get super many looks with this one, but you can get a smoky eye look with this one, you can get some silvery looks with this one, and you can even get a nice lilac look with this one. And I just think that there's just something very nice in this quality, that it's so effortless to use, yet you're able to get these sort of very intense looks out of this one if you really want to, but you can also like leave them and get these very sort of light looks with a bit of wash of color. Something that this obviously doesn't have, because it's not the style of makeup that Dior does. The only like very sparkly shade is the middle shade up here. However, even this isn't, as you can see, it has a nice shine to it, but it's not like anything super amazing. But still, I think if you know what you're going into with the Silver Essentials palette, you will not be disappointed in it, and definitely if you're looking for something that will last you through the whole day, it's a very, very good and nice option, and something that I would warm-heartedly recommend. Number 2 palette is a palette and is actually a brand that I tried for the first time this year, and this is again I believe one of the brands that hasn't initially done makeup but is perhaps more known for their fragrances. So on number 2 spot in my higher end palettes, and I'm very sorry about the reflection of this one, so this is the Byredo Remebrance palette, and I'm gonna open it so if we can perhaps a little bit. And you're probably gonna watch this and say that that's like a very basic neutral palette. And yes, I agree with you. This is a very basic neutral palette essentially. However, why this ranks where it is similar reason why the ABH and Dior palettes has ranked previously is that I was very... there was something like very positively surprising about this. I think the matte quality in this one is that these mattes are just something so... smooth and something so effortless, and everything is so cohesive with this one, even though you're probably thinking that it has these silvers that really shouldn't go with these sort of warm tone peachy mattes, but actually everything goes well together. The only dot shade really is this matte in the, or this is actually like a satin shade here in the bottom. This is very stiff to work with, so it's the only dot that this has. But other than that, like everything is just, this is one of those palettes that when I want something quick and I need something that I know that will have to I will have to like just be very office appropriate, and something that I know will like last me through the whole day. This is something that I will then dig out, and it's just very easy to also combine. So I think they chose the matte shades also very well, because all of them are so easy to combine, and you know that you will always get a cohesive look no matter what shades you combine with this one. Just like perhaps with the Dior palette before this, the shimmers aren't anything like super sparkly, so this has a couple of satin shades and then a few of these like more shinier shimmers here, but it is very subtle, so perhaps if you're someone with a mature lid, this is a formula that you might like to try. If you're looking for something super sparkly, then obviously this isn't the palette for you, and this was I think almost like 100 euros, so really think that is this the kind of eyeshadow formula that you really like, because if you like something more sort of very opaque, very intense, very these sort of multi-chrome shimmers, then this is obviously something you should not spend your money on. But if you're looking for something very effortless and something trustworthy, then I would definitely recommend this. However, this was a limited edition palette, so I believe this is no longer available, and Byredo has come out with these once a year. Yeah, I think they believe they have come out once a year, and once a year with these bigger palettes. They obviously have the quints. I haven't tried those, so I can't speak the quality about those. But I am very curious to see what is going to be their big palette in the upcoming spring, because springtime seems to be the time that they bring out the bigger one. So I would maybe actually see that if you have the money and you want to invest your money in this, then instead of the quints, buy the next big palette they come out with, because I do believe that you will get your money's worth of the more worth to your money if you buy these in terms of quality and in terms of the variety you get with these in terms of shades. And our number 1 palette, this was a bit of a surprise to myself, but alas, like I said in my little rant in between these, that because higher-end palettes haven't really been causing me the emotions they have perhaps caused in some other years, this really was just when I ranked these, this was the one that ended up on top. So this is the Pat McGrath Huetopian Dream palette. So this obviously didn't come out this year, but I bought this year and I got it on a sale. So, and I have always said it, buy Pat McGrath on sale, never buy her full price. And then I'm going to see if I can get this open. So this is how the palette looks like, and yeah, what perhaps in the end got this on top. So obviously I'm gonna say the obvious one, Pat McGrath mattes aren't my favorites, even in these like bigger mothership palettes. They are workable and you are able to get a look out of them, however they aren't my... For example, if I compare how effortless the Byredo or the Dior Backstage palette mattes, that mattes in the palettes were that I showed previously, like I need to work more with this one. But at the end of the day, what perhaps ranked this the highest is that this has something like very special, and it's these 4 shades. And the reason why I haven't been exactly happy with Pat McGrath, especially like this year, is that well, we all know that her newest mothership, it was pinks at this point, which she already came out with this one. She already came out with them on the Divine Rose and 1 and 2. And I have this one and the Divine Rose 1 and 2, so you obviously will guess that I didn't need the newest mothership, because that would have been just too much Pat McGrath pinks at a too expensive price point. And the second thing why have been quite disappointed in her is that the newest palette, it didn't have any more special shades. She still calls them special shades, but from all the reviews it's very obvious that they are just very basic shimmer shades, that maybe 1 or 2 of them have a shift to gold. However, we have seen the shift to gold now quite a lot of times from quite many brands. But this is still one of the palettes that did have her sort of OG special shade formula, and I'm gonna swatch the three because this also already has like one of these sort of like it is a multi-chrome essentially, but it is still one of the already like traditional shimmers. But these are the sort of special shades that still I think make this quite in the end ranked where it did. And I'm gonna already apologize for bad live hand swatching, but just so you can see the effects. Yeah. So it was in the end those 3 shimmer shades that still for me like ranked this the highest, because I like I said, when they are all like, I can't say that aside from the like Dior one, which was the quint, which was ranked the last, I don't think like any of the higher end palettes I showed like in this ranking are awful. Quite a lot of the higher end brands at this point, and then you really shouldn't like spend your money on a higher end palette if it doesn't fulfill like the basic criteria that it has like good basic mattes that you're able to layer shades on, and then it should have some nice shimmers. And because essentially almost all the palettes in this video and generally especially in the top 4 have quite nice good shimmers. Well, the Byredo and Dior perhaps not like these sparkly shimmers, but still the shimmer quality that they do have is very nice. I did have to think that what is the sort of like extra thing that makes a palette #1, and that is why this then ended up where it did. But yeah, it's nothing like revolutionary, and I do believe that unless Pat McGrath really starts doing something new next year, this might be my like last mothership purchase for a long time, because I feel that if she continues with the pink theme, and especially now that she no longer even has this sort of very special shifty beige shades in her palettes, I don't think these are worth the 100 euros or 120, I think is the normal price of these. And yeah, it's just, but with this one I am happy that I bought it. Obviously I waited for a sale, and especially at a sales price, I do think, considering the packaging and the shadow quality, this was a purchase that I'm happy with. And like I said, the special shades in this is what made it as my #1 higher end ranking palette this year. So that was it. That was an interesting video, and certainly, like I said, perhaps not as exciting as if I would have made this perhaps like 1 year ago, 2 years ago, then I would have been much more excited about this. The excitement is definitely on the indie palette ranking that will be coming soon. But anyway, comment down below, what have been your sort of favorite higher end ranking palettes, or are you over higher end brands in terms of eyeshadow? I'm definitely bit on the fence at the moment, because there are certainly still some higher end palette releases that interest me. However, you probably noticed that, for example, in terms of Natasha Denona, I haven't been buying her like the 2 nude ones, the Yucca and I Need a Nude, or the Xenon palette, and I think that just shows that there are now so many other nice eyeshadow palettes from other brands that are sort of like getting my eyes caught and sort of making me want to spend my money on them, rather than perhaps giving it to these traditional higher end brands. Not that there's anything wrong with them. And I do think that especially if you're a person who wants to see the palettes in store before buying them, there's certainly the advantage that these sort of traditional higher end brands have, because obviously smaller indie brands, they operate purely online. You can't test them, and you don't know how long it takes for the palettes to get to you. So I can completely understand why people still like these sort of traditional higher end brands that you can get from department stores, or if you have a Sephora in your country. But anyway, if you like the video, then push the like button, subscribe to the channel, and certainly if you want to get notifications from my future video, then push the bell button, which is somewhere on the screen. And you can find me also on Instagram with the same nickname, Makeup Hedgehog, and I hope I will be seeing you in another video soon. Bye bye!